Welcome everyone to the Pantheon. I'm your host Ray, and today we're looking at Shaft, like the 1971 film starring Richard Roundtree and Moses Gunn and Christopher St. James. Sorry, St. John. This is directed by Gordon Parks. This came out during the start of the Black exploitation movies. This movie as part of our Black History Month, about a year ago to this date, we did a review of Solo starring Mario Van Peebles. And in that one, I touched upon very briefly about Melvin Van Peebles, Mario's father, because 2 months before Shaft hit theaters, Sweetback was a movie that came out, and that really kicked off the idea of the concept of Black exploitation and the Black experience or the superhero or Black heroes. I did a review of I'm Gonna Get You Sucker last week with James Brothers and how they used the Black heroes of the 70s. Well, this is where it came from. Like a lot of it came from. Melvin Peoples, who did Sweetback, had a guy who was the anti-hero because there is no white savior. And that's what made this this sort of like genre extraordinary. Shaft didn't bow to the wills of the white man. He lived by his own rules, and in the end, he didn't concede to help the cops. He did things his way, and it was interesting how that played out. So the story of Shaft is this: John Shaft is a private eye. He's hired by a gangster played by Moses Gunn to find his missing daughter, and it's at one point eventually believed to be a rival gang of his, and he's teamed up with Revolutionary, played by Christopher St. John, to help get Crime Lord's daughter back. And this is interesting because unlike Sweetback, where the hero is on the run, our hero is married and he had two mistresses. He fooled around. So morally speaking, he wasn't necessarily that great. You could tell there's a scene where it's sort of dated. They use a candlestick telephone. The calendar tells you January 1971, which is very evident in terms of the setting. Emphasize giving a theme song or theme music to the hero. So the score was amazing. It's memorable. Isaac Hayes won an Emmy, I think it was, for his work, and the song for Shaft won an Oscar. So it was, it made a lot. I think it had a budget of I think $500,000. It made like $10 million back, and so Shaft, big score followed by this. Gordon Parks, the original director, directed that movie too. Parks, kind of like Cameron Crowe, started off as a photographer. His pictures were picked up and developed by Life magazine. What Cameron Crowe did was a photographer for Rolling Stone. What makes this unique too is that yes, it is for it. It was a hero for the Black community. It made Richard Roundtree a star, and it did not compromise. It pushed boundaries. So in terms of reception, I think at the time, yes, because it was controversial because of having a Black hero not seen before, especially in that context, it was really well done. And I think 2 years later, we had Coffee, starring Pam Grier, who was the first Black woman who basically became a hero too. She had to like go through the grunge until getting her revenge. So it's a different structure in terms of what the male hero dominant was. It was a female protagonist, seeking revenge, and she was smart and she was sophisticated. And then Foxy Brown came after that. So this genre or the subgenre, if you will, got bigger and bigger because you had Superfly, you had various other hero. Now, even though the heroes were pimps, thugs, and gangsters and drug lords, yes, there were some parts of it, yes, that was still playing on a certain stereotype, but it gave its anti-hero a platform. You can lead your audience through a story. The only problem was heroes of the 70s. It was an element where Blacks were in the forefront paving a way of being leading characters. And so if you had to start someplace, this was the start, because you didn't get that in Hollywood. And this allowed that transition of having a black leading man. I mean, since Sidney Poitier, Richard Pryor films and stand-up, Sidney Poitier directed Stir Crazy. I did not know it until years later, and he did three other comedies since then, and they were like just stellar performances. And his showcases, Pryor and Wilder, because they did like Another You, Silver Bullet, and Stir Crazy. So the genre, it kept running, it kept going, and kept developing. Now the show went on to spin off, I think, four more movies, including a cartoon series, I believe it was, or a TV series, which we don't want to get into, and a reboot with Samuel L. Jackson in 2019. Like Shaft, Big Score, Shaft in Africa, and there was, I think, two more Shaft iterations that follow through. Big Score was a little better, directed by Gordon Parks again. Shaft in Africa became a parody of itself, putting him in just a bizarre situation, starring Richard Roundtree. So I like the first one. It is compelling. It took the genre very seriously, and it made no excuses for the hero. And that's something you don't see. So with that, I'm your host, Ray. We'll see you next time. Take care.